Good morning, Year 4. Welcome back to our third reading session of this week. In today's session, we will have our final lesson this week on how to retrieve information from a text. On Thursday and Friday this week, we're going to be looking at inference and how to make inferences from a text too. Now, today you will be able to use scanning and skimming to find information and work out the gist of a text. You will also be able to identify keywords in the question, and you'll be able to use these keywords to think carefully about what a question is asking and to think of the possible answers before you've even checked the text. And finally, you'll be able to copy exact quotes from a text to be able to find the correct answer. We're going to look at 3 words that are going to be coming up in the book quite frequently today, and we need to make sure we know what they mean, because some of you might have heard of them before, but you might not actually understand how to use them correctly when you're writing, or when you're reading you might not understand the true meaning of them. So the first word is this word stirred, and we can look at the syllable of this word. It only has 1 syllable, stirred. And in the book, the quote that comes from this word is, "Lila stirred in her sleep." Now this stirred isn't where you've got something and you're stirring it, like some soup, that you're stirring some soup. This stirred is an alternative meaning, and it means to move or cause to move slightly. So in this context, Lila is stirring in her sleep. She is moving slightly in her sleep. And another way that we could use a stirred word is nothing stirred except the wind. And you could use these synonyms, and a synonym, if you remember, is a word that means the same as our original word. So words that mean the same as stirred are twitch, quiver, or tremble. And that means that nothing moved really, nothing quivered, nothing trembled, nothing stirred except the wind. So it gives this feeling to the reader that really nothing is around that person, nothing is making them move, okay? We're going to also be identifying the antonyms of these vocabulary words today. An antonym means the opposite of the word. So the opposite of stirred might be to stay put. And this is a bit of a diagram, kind of what stirred looks like, where this person is moving slightly each time. Okay? The second word that we're going to be looking at is marinating, and we can see this word has 4 syllables. Marinating. And from the book, it's from the quote, "The mince had spent the night marinating in it." Now you'll see more in context what they were marinating in, but this word marinate, you can see from the picture, means to soak food in a mixture of oil, wine, or spices before cooking. Some of you at home might have marinated a certain meat before, also some fish or any other food, and this word marinating, it means that this meat or this food soaks up all of these goodnesses, these spices, the oils, in order for when you cook it, for it to have that bit extra flavour. So the point from the book that it's trying to make is that these mints had marinated in something for so long that they'd actually changed their flavour. Another usage that you could look at is the fish was left to marinate before cooking. Some synonyms are soaking, steep, or percolate. So soaking in it is the same as marinating too, as were the other 2 words. Antonyms, though, the opposite of marinating is to dehydrate or dry something. Now these might not be exact opposites of marinating, but they're pretty close antonyms, where marinating being to soak something in a substance, but antonyms being dehydrating, really not giving it that kind of moisture that it needs, sort of. And the final word that is going to be coming up a lot today, so we really need to understand this one, is clearing. This word clearing has 2 syllables, clearing. And you can see a picture of a clearing here. A clearing is an open space in a forest, and it's used in the book when it's quoted, "He ran across the clearing." So they were obviously in a forest. We know that they were in the Amazon rainforest, and they came out into a clearing, which was the open space. Another way you could use it is they walked into the clearing. And words similar are words such as space. You can see that in this image that there's lots of space. It's an opening, it's a gap, it's a clearing, it's a space in a forest. An antonym, so a word opposite to clearing, could be something like constricting, where a space is so constricted there's not a lot of space to move. But that's the complete opposite to a clearing, because a clearing is an open space. So those 3 words are going to be in the book today. I am going to make a start at reading the book, but as always, you can follow the text on the screen too. And then we will look at some of our comprehension retrieval questions for today. So make sure your eyes are on the screen, please, and you are following. It was ferociously hot, and he was still alive. Those were the first thoughts that came to Fred as he opened his eyes and found himself staring straight up at the Brazilian sun. Instinctively, he looked down at his wristwatch, but the face was cracked and the minute hand had fallen off. Think about what that tells you about what they've been through so far, that now his watch is broken too. The 2 girls were asleep next to him. Both of them were covered in blood and scabs, but they were breathing easily. Con had her thumb in her mouth. There was a host of dragonflies in luminous blues and reds dancing around them. He thought they might be attracted to the blood. But there was no sign of the little boy. Max was missing. "Max!" Fred whispered, jumping to his feet. There was no answer, no movement, except the burr of dragonfly wings. Fred's heart started to pound. "Max!" He called louder. Lila stirred in her sleep, so we can see that because he shouted a little bit louder, it's made her twitch, it's made her stir in her sleep, but not so much that she's actually awoke. He ran to the edge of the trees. There was no trace of the boy. "Max!" he roared, staring wildly around. "What?" Max looked up. He was lying on his stomach behind some fern-like plants next to the vile-smelling puddle, plashing his fingers in the water. So he was plashing them, kind of tapping them in the water, making that sound in the water. "Max!" Fred ran over to him, wincing as one of his ribs protested sharply because he was in that much pain from what he'd been through so far. His ribs were hurting. "You haven't been drinking that water, have you?" Max stared up at Fred as he approached, then screwed his eyes shut and let out a scream that shook the baby flesh in his cheeks. Across the clearing, so across the open space in the forest, Lila gave a yell as she startled awake. So it's very different to when she stirred. "It's not very flattering," said Fred to Max, "but it was possible, he reckoned, that, covered in blood and soot and with less eyebrow than usual, he didn't look very reassuring." The boy kept screaming, barely drawing breath. Lila jumped to her feet. "Max!" she called. "What's happened?" "Sugar," Fred thought. He knew that you should give people sugar for a shock. "Do you want a sweet?" He had some mint humbugs in his pocket. "Please stop crying." He fished the sweets out. His hand came out wet. There was a cut on his thigh and half-dry blood in his pocket. And the mints had spent the night marinating in it, so we now know that the mints were marinating in blood and it wouldn't taste very nice. He grimaced and made this horrible facial expression as he put one in his mouth. The taste hadn't been improved, but the sugar gave his blood a twitch. "Do you want one of these?" Fred spat on a corner of his shirt and polished one clean. "It's a mint." "No, I hate mints," said Max. "It's the only food I've got." "Oh, then I'll take it," said Max. He said it like a lord accepting a peasant's bread because he really didn't want it. "Here," said Fred. He put it in the boy's sticky hand. "Eat it slowly if you can." Let's think, why did he want him to eat it slowly? Obviously because there wasn't much else there, so if you eat it slowly, the theory is that it should fill you up a bit faster. Wouldn't be so sure. Max sucked loudly. His nose began to run, down past his lips and onto his chin. "Max!" Lila yelled. "Come here!" "Come on," said Fred. The boy's face was intent on working on the mint. His eyebrows furrowed in concentration. He looked very breakable. Fred felt his chest tighten, but he said only, "You should probably blow your nose." "I don't blow my nose," said Max. They walked, both limping, towards Lila. "It's not a thing I do." "I think you should." "No!" Max licked the snot off his upper lip and added it to his mouthful of mint. Probably didn't think it could get any worse at this point, did he? 5-year-olds were not easy to argue with, Fred thought. Max had a sweep of dirt encrusted on his cheek, and his eyebrows turned up at the corners. It gave his face a mischievous tilt. Fred hooked his fingers into Max's shirt collar to steer him from thorns and what looked like rabbit droppings. The ground was mossy, speckled with patches of grass and creeper. One of the trees had scarlet flowers that had fallen and red carpeted the forest floor. Sitting amongst the flowers under the bright white sun, Lila and Con were arguing. "You, boy, what's your name?" "Fred," called Con. "Come and tell this girl she's completely wrong." "She thinks," began Lila, flushing. "Obviously, I think we should go back and wait near the plane," said Con, "in case they see it from the air, so they can rescue us." "It makes more sense to stay here," said Lila. She pulled her knees up to her chin. "We just get lost trying to find our way back, and I don't think anyone would see the plane. They don't know where we crashed. They'll have to search the entire jungle. We're on our own." She fixed her eyes onto the dandelion-like plant, fierce and unblinking. "We'll have to find a way to get to Manaus ourselves, which is a city in Brazil." Fred looked at the girl properly. She had a scratch across one side of her narrow face and hair woven into two plaits, one of which had been charred in the crash. She wore a scarlet skirt and a blood-red top, both now stained grey-green. She looked about his age, and she was scowling at Con. Con glared back. "That's crazy. We need to stay near the plane and wait to be rescued. My family would have sent dozens of planes to search for us by now. 100 planes, probably." "But," said Lila, "where we crashed is burnt by the fire. Half the trees are charcoal, so then there'll be no animals." "You don't need animal friends," said Con. "This isn't a fairy tale." "For us to eat," finished Lila. "And back there's—" "What?" said Con. "There's the pilot." Okay, guys, so this is the last bit you need to read. The last 2 pages you need to read to be able to complete today's lesson. Now, I'm just trying to move my face around and we can just move it there. If you pause the video and just read these last 2 pages, and then we'll go through the next questions for this today's lesson. Pause the video now, please. Okay, so I'm going to move my face back down here. And we're going to look at this first question here to help you with retrieval today. So the first question is, where was Max when he looked up? So remember, the very first thing we need to do when we have this first retrieval question is to look for the key words. So can you spot any key words in this question, please? Well done. I can hear lots of you saying some of the key words are where indicating that you are looking for a place or a location, and also this phrase, "he looked up." This is an important phrase that we can use when we are scanning the text. So I've just zoomed you into the page that would find the answer on, and I want us to have a go at scanning the text to see if we can find the phrase "he looked up," and also read backwards and forwards around those keywords to try and find a where, a place, a location. Can you pause the video and do that now, please? Okay, so we can see here that we have found the phrase highlighted in yellow, Max looked up. So that's the same as saying he looked up. We know it's about Max, this question. And now we can start to read forwards and backwards. And I've just highlighted that there in the blue brackets there, reading around the keywords until you think you find the right answer. So in this case, a location, a place, a where. "Max," he roared, staring wildly around. "What?" Max looked up. He was lying on his stomach behind some fern-like plants next to the vile-smelling puddle, plashing his fingers in the water. So can you see a where? Can you see a location? Can you see a place? If you can you just think about that for a moment, please, and think about what your answer might be? So we can see here we have found a where. Max was lying on his stomach behind some fern-like plants next to the vile-smelling puddle. However, that's not going to be our final answer. We need to make sure we're writing in full sentences. So our sentence might start something like this. When Max looked up, so I'm taking that bit in red there from my first original question. So when Max looked up, he was lying on his stomach behind some fern-like plants next to the vile-smelling puddle. So we can see now we've answered in full sentences, we've given a where, we've said that he was lying behind some fern-like plants next to all of these prepositions that are being used here. Behind, next to, give us this context of where Max was when he looked up. And we've also been kind of given the context. What was he doing? He was lying on his stomach, and that's just some extra information that tells the person who's marking your work that actually you've really looked at this question, you've looked at all of the information around, you've used those scanning techniques to do that. So that is the process I'd like you to take today for our final retrieval session of the week. So today I would like you to use pages 22 to 25 to answer the following retrieval questions. These pages of the book will be sourced in your resource pack today, along with these questions too. You don't need to worry about staying on the video. I would like you to work through the 8 of these questions in the same way that you've done with the previous sessions, please. Have a lovely afternoon, and I will see you in our next lesson. Bye, Year 4.